Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I appreciate, gentlemen. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. And I thank the gentleman from Nebraska for his leadership on ending this terrible tax. Can you imagine working your whole life to build up a family-owned business or a farm, and then upon your death, Uncle Sam swoops in and takes nearly half of what you've spent a lifetime building up for your children and grandchildren? Can you imagine, in this case, my friend from Washington talked about, this was a farm that had been in this family since the 1880s, 5 generations. It didn't start that size. It started small, and they built up over years and years and generations of generations. And when the young woman went back to Texas, she actually worked up here, went back to Texas to settle her aunt's estate. She and her brother were forced to sell off 2/3 of the farm that they had had for 5 generations. They had to sell off 2/3 of it just to pay Uncle Sam, just to try to keep some small portion of what their family had worked so hard to do. These are real-life examples of how the death tax is the wrong tax at the wrong time and hurts the wrong people. It's the number one reason family-owned businesses and farms aren't passed down to the next generation. It is, at its heart, an immoral tax, and it is an attack on the American dream, especially more so for our newest startups in America, women and minority-owned businesses building wealth for the first time, hoping that they can create a nest egg, that they can create a business for their children and grandchildren so they have greater opportunities in this great country. I really want to thank my Democrat leader, sponsor Democrat Congressman Sanford Bishop of Georgia, for his leadership to repeal the death tax and his belief that you shouldn't punish success. And I want to thank my colleague on the Ways and Means Committee, Representative Kristi Noem, longtime champion Congressman Mac Thornberry, and a former colleague of mine on the Ways and Means Committee, former Representative Kenny Hulshoff, who carried this legislation for so long. The super rich, they don't pay this tax. They have a legion of lawyers and tax planners. They have charitable trusts and foundations. They never pay this tax. These are family-owned, hard-working, risk-taking, determined Americans who are building their business, their farm, their ranch. These are not, as we'll hear today, the Paris Hiltons and robber barons of the Teddy Roosevelt days. These are Americans often forced back to the bank for a loan, or cruelly forced to sell their land and business just to satisfy the IRS. Death tax supporters will tell you this is all about income inequality, but it turns out, according to the Federal Reserve, former vice chairman, that only out of income inequality, only 2% is related to what people inherit. In America, turns out we do build our prosperity. We pull ourselves up in prosperity. Some people say, look, you know, this thing generates $200+ billion. Let me put this in perspective. For all the damage it does for our family-owned businesses and farms, the damage it will do to our women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses building wealth, it generates less than 2 days of federal spending a year, and it's declining. At the end of the day, this is a basic question. Is this your money and your hard work, or is this the government's money? Who has a claim over all the years you've spent working? And why, at the end of the day, are we punishing success? So, look, let's give children, let's give our families their shot at the American dream in a better nation than the one, frankly, that we inherited. So that's why today we rise to bury the death tax once and for all. With that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman from Texas reserve.